Hey everybody, welcome to Look Behind the Look. This is another bite-sized episode, and first, I want to give a warm welcome to all the new lookers. The response to our Less Than Zero video was incredible, and we're so excited to have you here. We love hearing your thoughts, how you relate to the films, your own anecdotes and tidbits and stories, and of course, what other films you want us to cover. And that's what this is all about. Love hearing from you guys. With the overwhelming response to Less Than Zero, we thought we'd stay in the realm of 80s cult classics with another dark and unforgettable film, Heathers. And much like Less Than Zero debatedly being a Christmas movie, let's just call Heathers a Valentine's Day movie. Why not? While Heathers isn't as obscure as some forgotten 80s films, it's far more than just a tale of high school clique and who gets the guy in the end. Its razor-sharp satire and black comedy deconstruct the very foundation of teen movie tropes, and at the time of its release was considered one of the most startling, revolutionary, and controversial teen movies ever to be released. It's gone on to influence so many films and TV shows like Clueless, Mean Girls, A Promising Young Woman, and even Euphoria, and was an antidote to the beloved Brat Pack and Hughesian films that carried the 80s at the time. And you guys, it's possible to love both. Believe me, I do. In our research, Kelly and I uncovered some fascinating behind-the-scenes details, so let's dive into the 1989 classic, Heathers. Winona Ryder's journey to landing the role of Veronica Sawyer was anything but smooth. Her agent begged her not to take the part, literally getting on her knees and saying, "You will never work again." Director Michael Lehmann and writer Daniel Waters didn't think she was pretty enough for the role. Gasp, I know, gross. Ryder was undeterred and determined to prove them wrong. She went straight to a mall makeup counter, got a complete makeover, and walked back into the office, and it worked. The craziest part was that she was still only 15 at the time, and she had the audacity to stand up to her agents, the director, and the writer to fight for the role she wanted. Ryder has since claimed she loves the movie so much that she talks about it like she wasn't even in it, estimating she's seen it about 50 times. The role was hers, and it's impossible to imagine anyone else playing Veronica with that signature acerbic wit and undeniably perfect hair. In this interview, we see a young Winona Ryder explain why she was drawn to the part and her affinity for darker sensibilities.
There's a certain kind of spooky that appeals to me. There's like, if it's like fun and like exciting, like I love to hear ghost stories told. I don't like to see like those, the slasher movies though. I don't like to see them acted out. I'm not like a violent person at all. You can see and people were just trying to talk me out of it because people do that when somebody wants to take, a risk, which is sort of irritating. But, people were trying to talk me out of it, and I was saying, there's no way you could tell me whatever you said to me wouldn't make a difference. I mean, even if you said that the movie would never be released or that the movie, you won't get any money for doing it, I wouldn't have cared. I just wanted to say those lines, and I wanted to work with those people.
Other actresses considered for Veronica included Jennifer Connelly and Justine Bateman. Brad Pitt read for the role of JD. He told Waters the script was brilliant, but ultimately the producers felt he was too nice for the role. I can see that. Christian Slater, on the other hand, had just the right edge for a teenage murderer. I'm not sure if that's the best compliment, but for an actor hungry for a role, he was the perfect match to play alongside Ryder. And if you know anything about Christian Slater, he's made a persona and a career as one of the greats at playing the masterfully cunning guy who you should hate, yet still somehow fall in love with. As for other strong personalities on set, Shannen Doherty had yet to hit her stride as a wild child in the industry. Much like Slater, she would later become known for her ability to play into an archetype, and hers was the ultimate mean girl. She was still a young 17-year-old newcomer here and was not so comfortable with the script's profanity. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, she remembers, "It was definitely the first time I had ever spoken like that in my entire life. I was a very sheltered 17-year-old. My mom was on set with me. I definitely had moments where I was blushing through my makeup." Despite the initial discomfort, nobody else could have played Heather Duke the way she did. In contrast to Ryder and Doherty, Lisanne Falk claimed she was 18 years old when filming, but in reality she was 23. She had no qualms about the project and was willing to do anything to be cast as Heather McNamara. Sadly, we lost some of our Heathers in real life. Kim Walker passed away from a cerebral herniation in 2001, and Shannen Doherty passed in 2024 after a long battle with cancer. They'll always be remembered for their incredible work and impact on the industry. Heather Graham was also considered for the role of Heather Chandler, but her parents found the script offensive and refused to let their 17-year-old daughter participate. She would instead go on to play Annie in Twin Peaks during that time, but despite the show's dark nature, her character was far more innocent and reserved than what was expected of Heather Chandler. Ironically, she would later play porn star Roller Girl in Boogie Nights. Kim Walker, who played Heather Chandler, was dating Slater at the time, and by the end of filming, they were no longer together. Rumor has it that while there was no messing around during production, Ryder and Slater did have a brief fling post-release, but quickly went their separate ways. Heathers is the brainchild of screenwriter Daniel Waters. He moved to LA in the early 1980s and worked at a video store that he described as the least cool video store in Silver Lake while writing the script, which was his first. And it was originally 200 pages long. His first draft was a 3-hour film with an even higher body count, including the death of the school newspaper editor. His dream was for Stanley Kubrick to direct it, with Full Metal Jacket influencing the opening cafeteria scene. The first line he ever wrote, "You can't use that knife, it's filthy." A perfect encapsulation of the film's morbid humor, but also hilarious to think that Heathers could have gone full Kubrick. Heathers, looking more like a Clockwork Orange, may have never found its way to the screen, but I won't deny that I would totally watch that rendition. Waters even had an idea for Heathers 2, where Veronica becomes a senator's page and eventually assassinates her boss. Yes, you guessed it, named Heather. He even pitched it to Meryl Streep while working with her on The House of Spirits. Streep was allegedly interested, but Ryder suspects she was just being polite. Again, couldn't you imagine? It never ceases to fascinate me where so many films could have gone past development. We did end up with a Heathers musical, though I'm more partial to whatever Meryl would be doing in Heathers 2. The musical was a giant success. And for what felt like a blip on the radar, the 2018 Heathers reboot was considered for Paramount for a 10-episode run. The show faced many delays in the wake of the Stoneman Douglas and Santa Fe high school shootings. The timing and content of school shooters and blowing up high schoolers just did not resonate with audiences, despite the show's attempt to hold up a mirror to the very real violence and horrors faced by Americans daily. They eventually decided to release the show online and then seemingly quietly backed away from it, leaving it to disappear into the ether of endless, ill-fated reboots. I'm curious to know if any of you saw this or had access to it. I did not. Heathers truly is a time capsule to a time before such horrific violence began to infiltrate everyday life. Post-Columbine, the world became a much different place, and so did our sensibilities in talking about these things. I've seen a lot of debate online between generations. Gen Z in particular are way less on board with viewing the film satirically due to how they've grown up, and I can definitely see how it would feel closer to a documentary than an outlandish fantasy to them, unfortunately. I think there's a lot to be said about how we can use satire and dark comedy to illustrate the state of society, but in this case, I like to think that the original 1989 film can live as it was and intended to be during its era. In this behind-the-scenes clip, Ryder and Slater share their experience on what it was like making the film.
It's a very perceptive look at high school life. It's, of course, very exaggerated, and it's a satire, it's a parody, but at the same time, it's completely sort of on the button, because it does, you know, we are addressing certain issues in very comic ways that sort of make you laugh, but at the same time make you think.
The short summary of the film is that it's about two kids who get revenge on all the cliques in school. It's kind of like a revenge for the nerds type of movie.
That's the best movie I've ever done, and and just to have sort of gotten through that whole process of making that movie and to see the response that it's getting now, the reviews and everything, makes me really happy and makes me feel like I really did something that I'm going to always cherish.
Cinematographer Frances Kenny took a strategic approach to lighting, and it was key to the storytelling of the film. The film starts out with soft pastels and high-key lighting, creating a seemingly safe and beautiful world. As the story descends into darkness, so does the lighting, moving into deeper shadows, primary colors, and harsher angles. All right, gonna nerd out here for a second here. So my cinematography lovers, in a 1988 interview with ASC Frances Kenny, he discussed his use of Congo blue and straw to highlight the shift from innocence to danger while gradually reducing the fill light shadows to become longer and starker, reflecting the film's psychological descent. He shot the film on Kodak's then-new 5297 film stock with a whopping 100,000 feet used. The first day of filming was rough. They were already behind schedule after struggling to light an outdoor croquet scene, even breaking a Matthew stand in the process. But by the end of the shoot, they were hitting 40 setups a day and managed to maintain the vision of how to use the light and shadows as characters as the film descended further and further into madness, blending beautifully with the performances, production design, and of course, the costumes. All right, here we go. The costumes. Costume designer Rudy Dillon leaned into exaggerated 80s styles. I wonder, were they exaggerated or were they normal? I guess they were exaggerated. Oversized blazers, shoulder pads, and ankle socks emphasized the rigid social structure and the power dressing that was popular during that era. As the Queen Bee knows, power dressing wasn't just about wealth, but about asserting dominance. Working Girl was released the same year and served as a massive inspiration in building a costume ensemble that solidified each girl's social hierarchy at Westerberg High. Heather Chandler was red, symbolizing power, dominance, aggression. Heather McNamara was yellow, symbolizing how cheerfulness masks insecurity. Heather Duke was green, filled with envy and ambition. And of course, Veronica Sawyer was blue, representing her melancholy, self-doubt, and rebellion. Details like the color-coded croquet balls and Heather Chandler's scrunchie of power reinforce the film's visual storytelling and exchanges of power. Notably, Chandler only removes the scrunchie twice. Once at the frat party, where she loses control, and once again just before drinking the fatal concoction. Veronica, while part of the Heather's clique, stands apart. She wears blacks, grays, blues, and quirky hats. And my favorite touch was her monocle. Always will be. I mean, can we get monocles back into the conversation? Meredith Marks must be a Heather's fan because I think she's single-handedly already making the best attempt at doing so. I know, it's a very classic, I'm not like other girls accessory and maybe trying too hard, but I always just loved that aspect of her costuming and still am wondering how she balanced it so gracefully in each scene. How did she wear it? With no hand. How did she wear it while writing so furiously? How? Veronica's wardrobe choices signaled her detachment from the group's rigid identity. However, in the beginning, she still aligns herself stylistically with the girls and their social status, despite her color choices. It's only as her relationship with JD develops that her wardrobe grows darker, visually aligning her with this nihilistic worldview and eventually ending with a bit of punk rock and who gives an F that she was trying to access. And even though she takes Heather's red scrunchie in the end, instead of following the classic Queen Bee succession trope, she uses that power to be her true self, befriend Martha Dunstock, and flip the classic outcast gets a makeover ending, like Ali Sheedy's character in The Breakfast Club. She accepts herself and no longer allows the Heather caste system to reign over the school. It's over. As for JD, his all-black attire was a classic 80s shorthand for troubled youth. Think Bender's trench coat or Matt Dillon in Drugstore Cowboy. His name, Jason Dean, nods both to Friday the 13th's Jason Voorhees and Rebel Without a Cause's James and the double entendre of juvenile delinquent. Subtle, not really, but hey, it worked. And we knew exactly who he was even before he said the first line.
You look like hell.
Yeah, I just got back.
Veronica, what are you doing?
Heather, my love, there's a new sheriff in town.
Still with me? Awesome. While Heathers may not have been a massive box office hit, its influence has endured as a defining dark comedy for Gen Xers and brought the genre new life. It's experimental, snarky, and packed with layers of subtext. Just the kind of film we love dissecting here on Look Behind the Look. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. What's your favorite Heathers moment? What'd we miss? And which film should we cover next? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.